Thank you, Madam Clerk. Welcome, Council.
Welcome.
So we will stand for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. May I ask Councillor Gardner to lead us in the National Anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée, les plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We should record that. Start our own album.
Merci. We acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territory of the Mohawk people of Akwesasne. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Bernadette Clément.
Présent.
Councillors Claude McIntosh.
Here.
Elaine McDonald.
Present.
Sid Gardner.
See.
Dean Hollingsworth. Caroline Hébert.
Présente.
And Councillors Maurice Dupel.
Present.
Glenn Grant.
Present.
Todd Bennett.
Present.
Justin Towndale.
Present.
And Éric Bergeron.
Present.
Any additions, deletions, or amendments?
I have one.
Oh. Councillor Elaine.
Yes, what I'd like to move number 2 and number 3 from consent to communications. And I think I may as well put number 1 in there too.
And I have one as well, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
That is the resolution that is on the agenda this evening. We will be adding the time of the meeting of 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Any other additions, deletions? Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Grant?
As amended.
As amended. Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Hébert? Second. All in favor? Any disclosure of interest? Councillor
I
Hébert?
have one, Madam Mayor. Unfinished business item number 1, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan will be done in collaboration with the Vibrant Community Roundtable, which is a project of the Social Development Council, which I am the Executive Director of. So I will step away for that item.
Thank you. Any other disclosure of interest? No. Need a motion for Committee of the Whole. Councillor Todd Bennett and Councillor Sid Gardner. All in favor? Adoption of minutes. The council meeting of February 11, 2019.
We have one amendment, Madam Mayor. That is the motion on communication item 4 was done in error, and it has been changed on the electronic copy and on the printed copy to read motion to receive report 2019-009 CL and direct administration to amend the procedural bylaw to incorporate the new definition of meeting at a subsequent regular council meeting.
Is everybody okay with that amendment? Anybody want to move the adoption of the minutes? Councillor Maurice Dupel, seconded by Councillor Claude McIntosh. All in favor? Thank you. Any presentations?
We have none, Madam Mayor.
Any delegations?
We have none.
Consent do we still have a consent
We
section?
do not.
We do
They've
not.
all been moved over.
So we'll go to resolutions.
Whereas the Corporation of the City of Cornwall's procedural bylaw calls for one regular meeting of council in the month of March, which shall be held on the 4th Monday of the month. And whereas there are several matters that need to be addressed and that cannot wait until the next regular council meeting of Monday, March 25th. Now therefore be it resolved, an additional regular council meeting be scheduled to take place on Monday, March 4th, 2019 at 5 p.m.
Anybody want to make that motion? Councillor Grant, Councillor Hébert, any discussion, questions? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one quick question. The premise to go to only one meeting in the month of March originally, was that because of market growth and trying to get a quorum and that kind of thing?
Madam Clerk?
Ultimately what the-
That was exactly it,
Okay.
because it was held during the second week of March and it is
Right,
March.
let me just follow that. Now, just out of curiosity and a matter of procedure, there's nothing stopping from this council or any council for that matter to have a regularly scheduled meeting, let's say the first Monday of the month of March to kind of get a, like, for future reference. There's nothing stopping us from saying we would like to have the one on the first Monday of March in the future to get around March.
No, it
break.
would be an amendment to the procedural bylaw, and we would include that.
I realize, but my point is we could make a motion under new
Yes.
business, say, bring a report and sounds good and we're gonna do this from now. The reason being, Your Worship, I get the March break thing, it's practical, but I think that for the most part, we should probably have 2 meetings in the month of March most of the time anyway, simply because it's kind of a regular operating month in the course of the municipality. I get that in the summertime, perhaps there's summer holidays and stuff like that, but, and I'm not gonna necessarily make a motion this evening about it, I'll give it some thought, but definitely I think for future reference, I get the March break thing, but I think we should have 2 regularly scheduled meetings in the month of March anyway, and how we wanna tweak it, I'll give it some consideration, but I think that's a good thing.
That's a fair comment, Councillor Hollingsworth. I wonder if the CAO would like to comment, because we did have a conversation about that today, actually.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would agree. And the month of March actually is fairly, the first quarter of the year is actually
It's
fairly
nice.
busy between budgets and contracts and RFPs and tenders. I also think that in the months of July and August, from what I've seen, there's an awful lot that we deal with in those months as well. I don't know that we need 2 meetings in both of those months, but depending on how, so with our procedural bylaw, right now there's planned to be 1 meeting in March, July, August, and also December. We always call a special meeting in December to deal with the water and sewer budget in addition to the council meeting. But I think that whether or not the meeting is part of the procedure bylaw, certainly council can make that decision. But it's really not necessarily that, I don't think it's out of order for a special council meeting to be called once we know, the timing of matters that we're dealing with, right? So if council wants more flexibility as far as the timing of those meetings, depending on the business needs, but absolutely, it's reasonable to have 2 meetings in March. And I think that in the summertime, we need more than 2 meetings between July and August. But the timing of that might be dependent on business and matters that we need to bring towards council.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Subsequent question,
Sure.
thank you, Your Worship. Why would we only have 1 meeting in September?
No, sorry, July and August.
July and
Okay, I
August.
thought
There are
you
two-
said
sorry.
September too, okay,
No,
so we
July
do
and
have 2
August.
meetings in September.
Mhm.
So in a perfect world, from a, bureaucrat sort of perspective, probably 2 in March, and then maybe 3 in the summer, and how we tweak those
Yeah.
is a procedural bylaw kind of thing, but we would potentially debate it. Anyway, so.
And even, if I may, Madam Mayor, even in December, part of the squeeze that we put on at the very beginning of December is we try to do the water and sewer budget prior to the first council meeting in December, or the 1 council meeting in December, to try and get that put forward, so we put the rates on that December meeting so that it can be adjusted on water and sewer bills in January, right? So, consideration can even be given to taking a look at how, those meetings occur between November and December. But it's pretty straightforward to call a special council meeting if council's available. We typically also try to look for Mondays where we don't have a council meeting and maybe we don't have a PAC meeting, or if a PAC meeting is not required, because we typically know that most of our councilors are available.
That being said, through you, Your Worship, perhaps, Madam CAO, we can have a bit of a discussion as to how you see a new business item worded. But speaking for myself, Your Worship, the responsibilities that, A, we as a council have, and ultimately administration has to keep the place rolling. Clearly, perhaps our procedural bylaw vis-a-vis meetings needs to be reconsidered or rediscussed, and maybe come up with a different plan, because I think it's a bit unfair to our administrators to say, hey, you know, these are our meetings, and put something together and you have to get it all done, and then, you know, complain that the meeting went too long, or we're too tired, or there's not enough time to get stuff done. I think it's time for us to reconsider it. Anyway, I'll
Okay, thank you.
have a talk. Thank you.
So, now Councillor Grant and then Councillor McIntosh.
That's okay,
It's Councillor McIntosh.
we're talking on that,
Okay, Councillor Grant?
it's a point of order, Madam Mayor, it has nothing to do with the motion that's on the floor, so I think if there's comes under new business, you wanna put a new business motion together, talk about procedure bylaw, we can do that.
I expect Councillor Hollingsworth will do that. Councillor Mack, did you want to? Thank
It's
you.
not really a concern, but it's an observation that
asking.
we're sticking with the first Monday in March. We're talking 4 business days between meetings. Would we have enough material, or would administration have enough time to get another agenda together in 4 business days?
Right, and
Madam
through,
CEO.
through you, Madam Mayor, again, it kind of depends on the, depends on what we need to bring forward to council. I know that, you know, we look at certain presentations, certain matters come forward. We can't put all of those off on one agenda. That's not the scenario that we're looking at between this week and next week. But, so,
We'd have to go to the second Monday in March, and the last.
right,
We're
and the
going
second
to-
Monday in March typically is the week of March break.
That's the genesis of the problem, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So I do thank you, seriously, for your patience. This is a big council week. We have tonight, we have budget meetings, and then we have another meeting on Monday. So I'm thanking you for your patience around all of this, these meetings. So thank you. Unfinished business reports.
First report is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. The action recommended is that Council A, approve the creation of the ad hoc Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. B, approve the draft terms of reference. And C, direct the coordinator to recruit the appropriate agencies and organizations, and once completed, prepare the appropriate bylaw to approve the committee membership.
Does anybody want to make that recommendation? Councillor Sid Gardner, Councillor Justin Towndale. Any discussion, debate? Councillor Grant?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just looking at the term of appointment is not fixed. This committee, just starting out, I believe that we shouldn't fix a point of, but the appointment should not be a fixed time, because let them go until they believe that they've completed the task. To take more than the required amount of time. So is that the intent of that it not be fixed, or?
Madam Clerk?
That is correct. So their sole duty is to put the plan together, and once the plan is put together, their job has completed.
Okay, and on the terms of reference, I was looking at
What page are you on?
66, page 2, but page 66 of our document, the first paragraph at the top of the page, individual members will ideally have the authority, et cetera, et cetera. What does that really mean?
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe is for the person, let's say if we have a person representing the education sector, that they would have a good understanding of having a voice at the table, speaking to all of the education sector, and what they would authorize that person to be able to say.
So that should be explained fairly well, because they're representing basically a large sector, right? The education sector. So as long as they completely understand that, because that's a big responsibility in my estimation. The other, at the bottom, when we talk about the, should the chair be unable to attend the meeting, he or she will contact one of the other members that serve as committee chair for some kind of consistency. Most committees have a co-chair, and I would recommend that that be put in rather than just identify another member, because you have some, now I don't know how we're going to proceed with that, but these terms of reference, if they're approved tonight, I'm asking for that to be an amendment. If that's in order.
Madam Clerk, that's in order?
If I may, Madam Mayor, I think the idea behind that is that some organizations may not have one person, a specific person. It'll be more the lead agency, and they may send somebody different every time. I could be wrong. Maybe, Madam CAO, you have?
I don't know for sure. I think that we actually do have several committees where a vice chair is not identified, and then in a meeting where the chair is not able to attend, then the committee members that are able to attend nominate a committee member that's there during the meeting to chair in their absence. So we could we could take your suggestion and amend it. I think that it's in order, but we do have quite a few committees where the vice chair is not clearly identified, because then you run into a problem where if the chair is not available, potentially the vice chair is not available. We still have quite a few people that are able to attend or proceed with the meeting, so you've no challenges with quorum. It's really just depending on how council would like to proceed.
Do you want to make that amendment, Councillor Grant?
Yes, I do. Excuse me. Only from all the committees I've been on in my life, which I've been on a lot of them, there's it shows a relatively good consistency, because then the clerk or the coordinator is talking to the same person all the time, so they have a good rapport. That's the purpose of that.
So we need a motion for that amendment. Did you have any other changes? So is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bennett? Any debate on the amendment? Oh, Councillor Gardner?
Well, just really, as Councillor Grant suggested, most all of the committees that I sit on have a vice chair. And if someone is out for a month and a half, 2 months, that vice chair now becomes the owner of the agenda. And not having a vice chair there and just picking who from the people that are there that night or that day is just, it's not consistent. It's I've had vice chairs in every committee that I'm on, and it's worked out that times the vice chair has taken over for 2 months. So I really want to suggest that we follow up on this and follow through on it.
Okay, so are we clear on the amendment? Did you get that, Madam Clerk? Okay. Any other debate on the amendment? All in favor? Any further debate on the recommendations as moved and seconded? As moved, seconded, and amended. All in favor? Thank you.
Item
Next
2.
item? Yeah.
Capital Works request of council for street lighting, streetscape, water, street gateway, and renovations to the civic complex. The recommendation is that council refer the following matters to the 2019 budget.
Can you read those through, A, B, and C?
Capital project loan request from Downtown Business Improvement Association for street lighting on Pitt Street. Funding request from Heart of the City for the Streetscape Water Street Gateway project, and request for funding to be approved to renovate the Cornwall Civic Complex.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor McIntosh?
Can I make a motion that we delete one of the recommendations?
So we have no motion to pass this all, so you
Yeah.
can make a motion to,
I'm not in favor of passing all three, that's what I'm trying to say.
okay. Which one do you want to?
C, renovations of the complex,
Okay, so you're making a motion
I-
to remove that?
not to send it to budget, because,
I'll second that.
Okay.
you know, we've got an asset plan, and
So
it's really an open-ended
Madam Clerk?
perhaps your motion would be to approve A and B?
A and B, correct.
Councillor Grant, do you,
Second.
A and B? Okay. So, debate. Councillor Gardner?
I'm not going to vote in favor of not holding it on during the budget deliberations, because we've got a major curling Bondsville or Ontario championships coming to Cornwall. And what needs to be fixed should be fixed before that, because the public from all over Ontario will be coming to Cornwall, and I want the complex to look presentable. So I won't vote in favor of not having it until the budget proceedings. I want to discuss it then.
Councillor Towndale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too won't be voting in favor of this motion. I understand where Councillor McIntosh, Councillor Grant are coming from. However, this issue's come up a few times, and quite frankly, I'd like to see a report on this from administration on this topic, because we can talk in circles about what it would take to renovate the complex, and quite frankly, I think we have, but I would like some concrete information in front of us that we can look at as a council. Regardless of if we pass it at budget or not, I think we need to actually have something solid we can refer to. And Councillor Gardner brings up a good point. There are major events coming up. In fact, when Rogers Hometown Hockey came last year, we spent some money to improve the Hall of Fame at the complex. To me, that's a renovation. So I think we should discuss this and look at it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bergeron?
Procedural question, I suppose. We're just talking about whether or not we can talk about this at our budget meetings, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's to defer it to the budget discussion, yeah.
but so if we pass the motion that Councillor McIntosh has said we cannot talk about it at the budget? It's not included in the budget?
It would not be included in the budget, that's correct.
I don't support that. I'd like to talk about it at the budget meetings this week. Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Boileau.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there would certainly be conversation about the civic complex. There are already capital projects that are identified, including seating, lighting, exterior renovations, and so on. And so those conversations will occur. They may not occur to meet the request that is within this suggestion, which is that those should be occurring to accommodate, the OHL or that kind of thing. But certainly the budget will include conversations about improvements to the complex, which of course are also, we're following a guideline, which is the asset management plan. And so that's really the critical document that we're following.
So I have Councillor Elaine McDonald, Grant, and Hollingsworth. So Elaine first. Councillor Elaine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question. Is there also somewhere on our radar screen a petition for improvements to the civic complex? Is that what's intended here, or?
Yes, that is the reason why that's there. Now, I can indicate that staff have met with the individual who brought that forward. There aren't a lot of details that they're proposing in terms
Okay.
of what we should be doing.
Yeah. Are you satisfied that the work that you're going to be proposing in the course of the budget is sufficient? And that, if we're going to get to it this week, that suits me, but I'm with Councillor McIntosh. If this somehow means a deferral till down the road somewhere, I wouldn't be in favor of it, because I think it's pretty important. However, waiting 3 days, to me, isn't too grievous a step for us to take. So I guess what's your feeling on this?
Well, my feeling is that we have a difficult enough time just trying to stay with the asset management plan financially. I think we're putting things in place to improve the complex. We're, of course, always trying to improve the complex, and we are doing that. And there will be elements that are in the capital projects that will do that, the seating, the lighting, exterior finishes, and that sort of thing. With respect to trying to attract an OHL team, for example, there would be requests that would be beyond our asset management plan. The installation of new corporate boxes and all of that, media, and so on.
Yeah.
So we're, I don't think it would be right for us to be trying to implement some of those aspects. I think what we need to do is follow the asset management plan, which is what we're doing. And if we get a request for something that we need to make changes on, we would then talk about those details.
So then this title in our agenda, Requests of Council, that means requests from the public of council? Is that rather than
It's,
items in the asset management plan?
It does result from that petition.
Okay, well then, I think we should go with the asset management plan because we tend to work over a period of years on these things rather than react to, momentary requests that we receive. But frankly, my problem with these three, I thought they should all be separate. We shouldn't just have the first two and then separate the third one, because the first one is a loan. Now, I know we don't lend money out willy-nilly, but I think it's rather unusual of the downtown, the DBIA to ask us for money to improve the downtown. They've contributed a great deal, and if it is a loan, would there be a financial repercussion to us that should make us hesitate and not deal with this until budget? Maybe Mrs. Bailey could tell us why we should wait till budget discussion for this.
Madam CFO?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it is a loan, but there is another part of it. The downtown BIA is also asking for the city to contribute to the high-level lighting, so they're going to take care of the decorative lighting.
Okay.
But there is a
Yeah.
financial impact.
Thank you.
to our budget.
That wasn't clear to me, so that's fine. So, and given that we're going to be discussing that this week, I think that I'm satisfied that we do deal with it this week. It's not such a great postponement.
Councillor Glenn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Mark mentioned everything I was, especially the asset management plan. If we have a plan, let's follow it, and let's let the manager decide on the priorities for that. I just wanted to correct one thing that Councillor Bergeron said, is you can bring up anything at budgets that you want to.
Thank you.
This doesn't restrict you. So
Thank you.
it's just for your. So I'm supporting this because I don't think it should be there, our asset management plan. The other two, I'd like to debate them when the budget discussions come around to see if it fits into the budget talk itself. I'd like to see it go forward, and then we'll have our debate at that time. I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Perhaps a question, Your Worship, and then maybe a comment. I'll try to stay in order. Councillor Grant doesn't correct me.
No.
Good idea.
No. Oh, look here. It's all good.
To Your Worship.
Thank you.
To Mr. Boileau. Asset management plan, what date, when was that established? 2 years, 3?
It goes back to 2016.
2016, thank you. Now, my point is this, Your Worship. A plan is great. There's nothing wrong with having a plan, but sometimes things change, priorities change. It's not as a document is carved in stone. Somebody's thrown out a suggestion, we debate it, budget potential renovations at the complex. I'm certainly not suggesting throwing the plan out the window, but I think that there's nothing wrong with having a discussion or a debate about, let's be honest, the complex is arguably one of our so-called marquee buildings, and I think that at a budget deliberation, it should technically be in order, and we're talking about a couple of days here. So I'm not going to vote in favor of splitting them or deferring them or not having them at budget, because why wouldn't we discuss it at budget? So I'm not going to support the motion on the table. Thank you.
Any further debate before I ask Councillor McIntosh to wrap it up? Councillor DePel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was just trying to go back to the December 10th meeting. So what exactly are the renovations that are being proposed?
Mr. Boileau?
It says that it's from our December 10th meeting.
My recollection from speaking with Jamie Fothrop about it is that there weren't a lot of details in the request. It was really just a general improvements necessary to the complex to try to accommodate, as given as an example, a large user like the OHL. But my feeling is that the asset management plan really lays that out in terms of keeping it in good shape. And I think, the 2019 budget is really has elements that are not inexpensive. The lighting, the seating, exterior improvements, and so on. And I think it's a responsible plan to keep it going forward. I think if you were dealing with a request like the OHL, you'd start getting into details that are considerably more expensive and would need a full conversation about those elements. We're not going to put those in place and then try to get consultants.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McIntosh?
It's such an open-ended question. I mean, somebody walks in off the street and goes to see Mark and says, I want renovations at the complex, and we jump on it. We've got a plan, we're following it. The complex, I believe, has never looked better. We've done a great job down there. Belleville spent $10 million renovating their arena to get an AHL club. We're not even going to come close to that, but I guarantee you to bring an OHL club in here, you'd be talking about $1 million renovations that they would demand. As far as the curling goes, I didn't hear the curling association saying, you need to have this, you need to have that. They came in and said, hey, we like what we see. We'll hold the event. So why would we want to suddenly turn around and say, by the way, we'll be fixing it up for you even though you don't want it fixed up. I think it's, and to ask administration to have budget time, which is what, next Wednesday, to come back and give us proposals about renovations that we really don't know what we want to renovate, is a waste of time. We can have that discussion anytime after budget. This is not going to pass the budget. We're not going to spend $500,000-$600,000 in this budget to renovate the complex. So why would we even want to have the discussion? We can have that later.
Madam Clerk, I want to make sure that we're not, we don't have an awkward motion here. So what is it, what is it that people will be voting for or against, right?
So the motion is that council refer the following matters to the 2019 budget. Items A and B, the capital project loan request from Downtown Business Improvement Association for street lighting on Pitt Street, and B, funding request from Heart of the City for the Streetscape Water Street Gateway project. Those two items only.
And then you would entertain.
So if you voted for it, though, then those two items would go, and somebody could make a subsequent motion to add C. Wouldn't they be able to?
They would.
Does council understand that? Councillor Lane?
If I could have a clarification then,
Sure.
Madam Mayor. Because when my colleague asked that A and B be isolated, I thought he wanted C to be discussed tonight instead of at budget.
No.
So I misunderstood totally, because he made no reference to C. So I gathered then that he's moving that we do A and B in budget and drop C altogether? Like, I just wish there were clarification on that.
So is that the motion? Is the motion that C not be included? In fact, that C be specifically excluded, Madam Clerk?
Is that your motion, Councillor McIntosh?
We need clarity.
The intent of the motion is that we don't proceed with C to budget, which begins next Wednesday. Which would mean a report, somehow we could have to report from administration. I'm not even sure what kind of, we don't know the renovations. I don't know what we're going to discuss.
Okay. So the seconder of the motion is clear with that, Councillor Grant?
I think a point could be that we just, instead of talking about, if you want to change this, instead of talking about A and B, that we exclude item C. That way it doesn't stop somebody else from coming up, one of the other councillors saying, well, I want to eliminate A as well. So if the mover of the motion would agree with that we eliminate C in this, then we can go forward with that.
That was my intent, that
Okay.
that we move ahead with A and B and not move C to the budget
Very good.
discussions.
Okay. So it's to proceed with A and B and not C. That clear?
At budget.
It's clear.
At budget. All right. We all clear?
Okay.
All in favor of that motion? Against? Against. Carried? Okay. Thank you.
So we're going to go backwards and go to our consent
Consent
items.
items.
First
Number
one is a proclamation of International Women's Day. The action recommended is that council proclaim Friday, March 8th, 2019 as International Women's Day in the city of Cornwall.
Councillor Elaine McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to recognize the work that women have done over the years to bring women to the status that they enjoy today. And I don't want there to be any delusion or any illusions in anybody's mind about exactly where women are today. because there are 3 ways that we measure progress for women socially. And the first one, of course, is with regard to wages. And I think that as a corporation, I believe we do very well, and I'm sure the HR manager would support this, that we have fair policies for the women in our employment, and equitable, I believe, as well. But in the world at large, and that means Cornwall at large, women tend to make 71% on average of what men make. So the work of the women's revolution is not over. We have 30% to go for, and it affects all of us. I mean, this is our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our aunts. We're talking about women intimately connected to us, and I think it's incumbent on everybody to ensure that that revolution keeps going forward. And of course, the other way is in terms of electoral politics, and we have a woman mayor, and this is wonderful, but only 20% of our councillors are women, and that's lamentable. We have very excellent men sitting at the table, but it's not equal. So we have work to do there too. And when it comes to corporate boards, that's the 3rd place where people look at the status of women, and women certainly haven't achieved the ranks that they should within corporate Canada. So I simply congratulate everybody who's done work to bring women where they are now, and for the most part that's women who have fought that battle. And I invite everybody to make sure that the struggle continues and is successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I believe I didn't call for a seconder. There's got to be a seconder for that. Councillor Caroline Hébert. Any further comments? Councillor McIntosh.
I follow this up as a husband of a businesswoman who was successful in her field and was a pioneer in her field. You think back 20 years ago, this corporation, and there weren't a lot of women involved in administration. I look at the front row here. I don't think there are many municipalities of our size who have 4 women sitting at the head of council, and they do a tremendous job. I think we made great strides, but as I agree with Elaine, there's still a lot to do.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Bergeron?
This is my question again. What does it mean when we proclaim? What are we actually talking about?
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor. A proclamation will be a specific document that is signed by the mayor and provided to the organization for them to celebrate that special week.
Okay. That in general for all proclamations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes it comes with a flag raising or some other activities during the week.
It's
a thing.
Okay, thank you.
It is a real thing. And this particular thing,
Stick around. Things we deal with.
no, it's a good question. This particular thing was put on the agenda by the Canadian Federation of University Women, which has a very active local chapter and puts on really great events. So it's thanks to them that it's on our agenda tonight. Any further comment? All in favor? Thank you.
Corporate policy, council staff relations, and the action recommended is that council receive this report.
Councillor Elaine MacDonald makes the motion, seconded by
Yes.
Councillor Towndale. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Elaine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I read this thoroughly, and I know that when we have our councillor orientation sessions, we'll probably deal much more precisely and specifically and minutely with all these details. But I was especially pleased to see some simple clarifications that are, I think, good, that we remind ourselves. I couldn't help but think in the role of council, Part E, as being very significant, that members shall not direct staff or intimidate staff, not that anybody would do that, but the direction of staff. Like, I think it's so well spelled out here that Mrs. Adams is our employee, and it is to her that we would direct any recommendations or suggestions or questions we have about staff, that she is the person to deal with staff, and we deal with Mrs. Adams. And I think that that's obvious between the lines many places here, but specifically there. And just that one simple of the many 100 simple points here is good for us to keep in mind, and it makes for good, orderly staff council relations. So I don't know who put this together, but well done.
Actually, before I go to Councillor Towndale, maybe we should just discuss who put this together, so we have this, we're all on the same page. Should I turn to the CAO?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So after we recruited our integrity commissioner they have done a lot of work on these types of policies. So all municipalities have to, by March, get a policy in place for staff-council relations. It's part of the new Bill 68 changes. So we have pulled a lot of policies that we've seen off of several municipalities. So we've had the assistance with Tony Fleming to put this together. We thought it was very good. We've made a couple of minor edits to it, but just as background.
Good. Councillor Towndale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I do have a question on one of the clauses in here. So it's under Section 2, and then subsection 1, point G, and it says, members should respect the time of staff by providing advance notice of any substantial questions to be raised at a council meeting so that they may have the required time to provide an adequate response or report. So my concern is something like this. So we generally get our agendas Wednesday or Thursdays of the week. Someone like myself, I'll be working Wednesday all day, Thursday evenings generally. And then if I have a training exercise, Friday all day, Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'll sit down with my agenda Sunday evening with a council meeting Monday evening. So if I have major questions that come out of that agenda on Sunday evening, I'm going to ask them on the Monday. But I don't have any lead-in time to provide advance notice. Even this week, I'll use this weekend as an example because we just agreed to have a council meeting next Monday. We have budget meetings Wednesday, Thursday, potentially Friday, Saturday. So I don't know when we're going to get that agenda, but we're going to be so tied up with budget that we likely won't look at the Monday's council agenda until Saturday afternoon at the earliest, maybe Sunday, for a Monday council meeting. There's no lead-in time to provide questions in advance. So I have some concerns with that because if I have questions, will I have the right to ask them at a council meeting? I'd like to say yes. I don't like the idea that I can't ask them because I didn't give enough lead-in time. So I have some concerns about that.
Madam CEO?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So your point is very well taken, and an excellent question, by the way. Staff, really our senior team, is prepared on Monday to try and monitor any type of questions that come in through the day from council. So whether it's Monday morning, even midday Monday, quite often, staff at least gives them enough time to take a look at whether additional information needs to be provided that they can bring with them to the meeting to help be able to answer questions. So I will speak to my previous role in finance. Any numerical question you want to ask absolutely is in order, but I might not have had that information at my fingertips at the meeting. But if I would have had a couple of hours notice, I could have potentially had some of that history or detail present. So, and we also understand that depending on how a debate goes, questions might come up that you didn't anticipate prior to the meeting you were going to ask those questions. So that's absolutely understandable as well. It's just that when you are aware of a question that you're going to ask, depending on the type of information, if you give staff a little bit of lead time, even if it's only a day or a couple of hours, it still might help them bring additional information to the meeting so that they can help advance, part of the discussion. Because sometimes what we do in our meetings is we will say, we can easily get you that information and we will send an email to council the following day or we'll get it to you promptly. But so there are a lot of things that we can respond to. I think it is a good practice amongst many municipalities. Depending on the complexity, if it's more notice, great. We also want to prevent items from being deferred. So if the information can't be provided, then sometimes we get a deferral on an item. And if we would have just had, a little bit of notice on a question, depending on what it is, then we might be able to help keep that conversation or the debate going so that the motion can move forward.
Thank you, Madam CEO. I understand that entirely. I get what it's trying to do, but I don't know if that's always realistic, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that it is.
So this is on the agenda for debate, right? So right now, it's coming back on another agenda. So, we could consider your comment and make some changes to G and add the day of the meeting, or, we could adjust that. That's the point of this conversation now, so that we can include those changes going forward.
I suppose I'm providing advance notice now at this
You
meeting.
are. That's exactly what you're doing, Councillor Towndale.
But as long as we have the ability to still ask questions where it's, we don't enter a scenario where it's like, oh, you can't ask that because you didn't provide notice. I don't think that's acceptable.
Right.
That's my concern. Thank you.
That's not the intent.
Got it. Councillor Grant and then Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to go back to that last comment.
Yes.
I think what it says that members should, it doesn't say shall. So shall means that that's the way you have to go. Should is, ideally you should do that. It doesn't restrict you from not doing it the day of it, and it's basically to be considerate of the manager. So I think the wording here doesn't, it's adequate enough to say should, and so, in E of the same page, it says realistic expectations, and then it talks about reasonable expectations. Are they reasonable or realistic? Because they're two different things. Reasonable expectations, I think that should be reworded to say reasonable expectation, not realistic, because it doesn't. The other role of council, and talk about the role of members is to represent the municipality, provide direction to staff through the CAO. I think that needs some elaboration to talk about through, we do that through motions at council meetings. We provide direction. I don't think it's my right to call up the CAO and say, I direct you to tell Martin Boileau to put in something at the civic complex. That's, I think the way this is worded, it sounds like I have that right to do that, and I don't think that's the way it should be. So I think there should be, through motions or whatever the wording is, to provide that direction. Now, when I'm making these suggestions, are we talking, do I have to make a motion to that, or is this
No,
just-
so you're making the suggestions, they're being noted down, and it's coming back up on a future agenda where we will actually pass that with those changes if council feels those are to be included.
Okay, on page 25, it talks about emails to staff during off hours. Should be sent only as necessary during emergencies while respecting the private lives of staff. Well, to me, I don't think, similar to Councillor Towndale, I think an email to staff on the weekend, I don't expect a response right away. So if I'm reading this on a Sunday and I know I'm going to be busy on a Monday, I send an email to staff. I don't expect it on a Sunday, but I expect an answer on Monday if possible.
Okay.
So I think that's that's something I think should be looked at as well.
Okay.
And I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Bergeron?
So Councillor Grant has covered about 98% of what I was about to say.
Good job, Councillor Grant.
Usual. I just wanted to make sure we're just receiving a report, so I don't have a problem receiving a report. I agree with what Councillor Towndale said, Councillor Grant, about item G. In no way should I be prevented from asking a question at council to staff. I don't think that's the intent here, so that's really clear to me.
Right.
But what he just brought up is actually interesting to me. If it was worded to say we send emails only as necessary instead of during emergencies, those seem like two very different things to me.
Okay.
If I deem something necessary to reach out to a staff, that's very different than if there's an emergency need to do so. So maybe consider that wording when you're bringing the report back. I just find them very, very different, and a lot of us are responding on weekends to things.
Yep.
I would hate that to a reply to say, well, this isn't an emergency. Well, if it's necessary for us, then that's a very different conversation. I think that's the intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh.
I was just going to make an observation about regarding to Glenn's thing about the emails. I wouldn't necessarily expect an answer. Just alerting somebody to the fact that you read it today, fine. If you don't, you wait till Monday, that's no problem. When it comes to the one Councillor Towndale mentioned about the advance notice, yeah, I think there are obviously exceptions to the rule, but it reminds me of a story a few years ago. I was talking to a retired senior manager, and back in those days, there was one councillor really had tough questions during the council meeting. I remember asking him, I said, boy, that must have really upset you. He said, no, loved it. He called me every afternoon. Here, I'm going to ask you this question tonight. Be ready. And he said it was great. And rather than, blindsiding me during a council meeting. So that worked both ways.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
You know what, Your Worship, it's already been done. I'm good.
You're not going to speak, Councillor Hollingsworth.
No, we're good. It's under control. Carry on.
Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify also, for the emails sent, because mine go out after 9 p.m. every night, pretty much, for the evenings that I send them, so I don't expect a response either. It's just that when I'm able to send those emails, I send them off. So.
Thank you. Any further comments? So you've taken notes on those. I will add a couple of things. Under collaboration and partnership, at page 23, I would add something about favoring conversations as opposed to communications just by email. I think that we should be encouraged to actually speak to each other whenever possible. And I think that should be spelled out. I know we assume that we're always going to be meeting and sending emails, but sometimes in between meetings, we should actually have a conversation. So I'd like to see something to that effect in there. The other thing is under role of staff at page 26, around reports. So administration writes reports, and I would like to see reports be refer to strategic priorities as much as possible, and I think we should spell that out in this policy. I know we do it, but if it were part of a policy and an expectation that all of our staff reports refer to the priorities of the community, that would be helpful. So my understanding is this is going to come back on a subsequent agenda, and then we'll have final debate and determine that we can pass this. Sound good? So all in favor? Carried. Final report?
Enumeration final report. The action recommended is that council receive this report.
Councillor Caroline Hébert makes the motion. Councillor Sid Gardner seconds. Councillor Hébert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of comments and a question. First of all, great congratulations to Melissa Morgan and Cynthia Ferguson for the excellent work in this report. Thank you very much. And I want to point out how important data is for the nonprofit world, and I mean other sectors as well, but there's a huge lack of data in Ontario and Canada really in general, and so the work that has gone into this report will certainly help not only the department but nonprofits with decision making and possibly even grant opportunities. So the more data available to nonprofits, the better, because there's a huge lack right now. So thank you for providing data to make our lives easier in the nonprofit world. I also want to point out that yes, there were 83 people who responded to their survey and 34 fell under the criteria, but I know for a fact that their staff spoke to over 200 people, having 200 conversations that led down to the 83 falling into the homelessness category, and then 34 under the Provincial's category for homelessness. So I know that 83 is a big number, but 200 is significantly more, and I know for a fact that that their staff spent the time and had all of those conversations across the counties, and spent days upon days speaking to the residents of Cornwall SDNG that are certainly in need and need to be heard. And so certainly important to have their information put into this kind of format as well. So thank you for that. On that, now that we have all of this, what are the next steps for the department?
Ms. Ferguson.
So first of all, this data will be used as our baseline. So we will be reconducting enumeration again every 2 years. So we will be able to see how this data changes from periods, the years. Secondly, we'll be using this information towards our 5-year update of our 10-year plan. Also, we're going to be sharing this with community agencies as well, because it will be valuable for them, for their programming. And hopefully, we will be getting additional funding over the years, and we can target that funding towards some of these results that we found. So, as you notice, a lot of the homeless people were young males, single males. So we would look at targeting those specific groups when using new funding. Another thing that we're considering is when the end of operating agreements come up for our housing providers, when we look at regenerating housing stock, again, we look at what our community needs are in terms of homelessness, use this data to try to make business cases for those housing providers.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you very much for the report. I will be asking when this comes back, we're asking to receive this. On page 43 of the report, one of the issues that stood out with me was the fact that 22% of homeless people identified not being able to pay rent or mortgage, and that really bothers me. And it also follows the Alpha meeting I went with the Eastern Ontario Health Unit this past week, also discussed the exact same stuff as what was in this report. So I thank you for the report, but my question is going to come when it comes back, is what are we doing about homelessness? And have we gone to the federal and provincial governments to see if there's any funding for low-cost housing? I asked that question 2 weeks ago, and I'm asking it again, and it's going to come back when this report comes back. So thank you.
Ms. Ferguson, do you want to respond to part of that or any part of that right now?
So, I think, obviously, we always advocate for additional funding through the federal and the provincial government. We still do not have any information regarding the federal housing strategy. Hopefully, with that announcement, we will hear about new funding for social housing. Ms. Morgan has actually applied for a new grant to assist with intensive case management for people at risk of homelessness. So we're hoping that that will come to us in the community. But outside of that, we don't have any announcements. It may be something we can discuss during budget, but at this time we don't have any additional.
What's something that I'm looking for down the road as an answer of what can we do about this problem? And I would also include in there mental health, because that's something we dealt with. Mental health issues in the old days were set in buildings with walls around them. Now we've got housing that's more favorable to the people with mental health issues. So that'll come up later on with me too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh?
A couple of questions. One is the hidden homeless category. People staying with family and friends. That's a pretty broad statement. If you're staying with family, can you really be considered homeless?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the provincial government has a definition of different types of homelessness. So you can be, I don't want to say traditionally homeless, that's not what I mean, but under a bridge, et cetera, is one definition of homeless, but there's a continuum of homelessness and being at risk of homeless. So if you don't have your own permanent residence, that is a risk factor towards homelessness. So it's not that living with family is a bad thing, but it's not a stable environment necessarily if you're going from one family member to a different family member to a friend.
I see. Okay. And 47% of the respondents said they're in that situation. The other thing, too, is on the questions, just bear with me, why would sexual orientation be a question?
It's funny, I said the same thing this morning. However, these were all provincial questions. We did not create any of these questions. So this was mandated by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that we ask these questions in this fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about homelessness. So many young people are not living at home, and I think it's a case where they're a victim of circumstances where they're safer. They feel safer on the street or at a friend's house than they do at home. Would that be a fair statement?
We didn't collect any data regarding that topic per se. I think that we need more information regarding why people are unable to pay their rent, as Mr. Gardner said. Why aren't the younger folks at home? That wasn't part of the questionnaire, so we have to complete a survey to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and I think that we will be making some recommendations about having different questions so we can find out more information in order to target our programming towards maybe some situations, as you suggest, that maybe it's familial issues that we need to address as well.
It's really a breeding ground for other social ills too, isn't it, homelessness?
It's kind of the foundation of issues of poverty, is if you don't have a home, you're unable to build educational foundation, you have difficulty maintaining employment. So in my opinion, this is just the basics that you need to have dealt with before you can move forward. So I think it's a really important topic that we're looking into here.
During the one of the presidential elections about 12 years ago, one of the candidates said when it came to weapons of mass destruction, the United States had 3 of them: poverty, homelessness, and unemployment. And, homelessness right up there.
Does anybody else have any questions before I recognize Councillor Hébert again? Councillor Elaine McDonald, and then I'll go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And actually, Mrs. Ferguson alluded indirectly to this at least, but as Councillor Hébert mentioned, her observation of homelessness doesn't really correspond to what the figures we have here. And we kept coming across this phrase, the provincial definition of homelessness. So I just wonder if in a nutshell you can tell us how the province sees homelessness as opposed to how we might.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the people that were being excluded from the surveys were anyone who has not been homeless within the past 12 months. So anyone who said I've been homeless 5 years ago was not included, even though they had experienced homelessness. So 13 months and above, they were not included if they'd been homeless.
Okay, well that helps. And then I do have a question too. It's unfortunate that it looks as though the only homelessness in SD&G is in North Dundas and Cornwall, and I think that's likely related to the fact that those communities have agencies and organizations that succor to the homeless or people who are in danger of being homeless. And am I right about that? Like, does that mean that South Glengarry and North Stormont, even South Dundas, they have no facilities or agencies or organizations that cater to, I know South Dundas has at least one food dispensing place, but I mean, there's just nothing out there, and is that why nobody was polled in those places? Because, I mean, I think this is great that we've started with this, but if you don't measure something, you can't respond to it or develop policy, and this gives a very skewed picture of the lack of homelessness everywhere except Cornwall and North Dundas. It's unfortunate. Now, is that on us that people weren't polled in those areas, or there's just nothing there?
No, Madam Mayor. So I would say that this was a learning experience in terms of how we selected the organizations that we went to, the times that we went, and that may have skewed the results to look this way. So I think that in 2 years, Mrs. Morgan and her team through social services, they will be looking at different ways to ensure that we capture a more reflective picture of what is going on in all the counties. So I think that maybe we just hit these 2 areas at the right day, at the right time, and the right people happen to be there. So it was just a 1-week period. So if people were not available to complete the survey, or they didn't want to complete the survey during that week period, we didn't get that information. Right. So I wouldn't say it's reflective of that there's only homeless people in those 2 areas, right, or that there's no services. It's just that we did not get people included in the surveys in those counties during that week.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I think that's, thanks for the explanation, and I think this is a wonderful first step. So, and I'm glad Mrs. Morgan's going to take it further in successive rounds.
Councillor Hébert.
Thank you for allowing me to speak a second time, Madam Mayor. I just
You're
have
welcome.
2 comments to make. One on Councillor McDonald's questions. The numbers also may be skewed because it is difficult to disclose this information. So of all the conversations they had, 34 were able to disclose these personal items or situations in their lives with ease. I'm sure even those who did declare did not do it with ease, but sometimes you keep these things to yourself. But I think with that in mind, they still did an amazing job being able to speak to this many people. I also want to make a reference to the comment made by Councillor McIntosh about the reason why sexual orientation may have been added to the survey. Councillor McIntosh also mentioned, there's a lot of youth who may not be feeling safe at home, which is maybe why they're living on the streets or at risk of homelessness. I think those two tie in together. A lot of the LGBTQ community, the younger folks, might not feel safe living in homes where they may not feel accepted by their guardians or their parents. So they may feel safer couch surfing or living in a shelter or on the streets, and we're seeing it certainly a lot more in larger communities, homeless shelters specifically for the LGBTQ community, where they can feel safe and they can be themselves without risk of discrimination. So I just wanted to make that point. I know that's something that we're talking a lot about in the nonprofit world.
Thank you, Councillor Iba. I'd just like to add that I also thank you for your report. It's an imperfect report, as these surveys are. And we know that you will come back to us. Homelessness, we definitely have it here. It just doesn't look like it does in Toronto or Ottawa. It looks like it does here. And I just want to end on going back to Councillor Gardner's points. I think that, you know, waiting for the federal and provincial government to come forward is fine, but there are probably some things that we can do as a municipality to be more proactive. And I think that we should, as a council, be much more assertive and aggressive in the way that we want to look at creating affordable housing and partnering with people to create affordable housing. Because sometimes if you wait for the province or the federal government, you just wait and wait and wait. And so we may not want to do that, or we may want to think of different ways of tackling this problem. So thank you. All in favor? Carried. Next item.
We're on to tenders and requests for proposal, Madam Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
The first one is tender 19T07, water main CIPP relining on various city streets. The action recommended is that this tender be awarded to Aquarab Canada Incorporated from Laval, Quebec, at the total bid price of $708,854.65.
Moved by Councillor Elaine McDonald, seconded by Councillor Grant. Any debate? Councillor Bergeron.
A few questions, I think, for the CFO, if I may.
Go ahead.
And these are general questions about all RFPs, but since we're on camera, these might be great for budget meetings this week. The net cost is $638,345. In budget, we always use net cost.
Madam CFO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. In budget, what we use is net cost plus the amount of HST that as a municipality, we're not able to claim back through the CRA. So it is net cost. If there is a recovery for HST, it's not included in the expense.
Right. This, we've budgeted $700,000. This is just an example, but it will lead to all of my whole series of questions. $700,000 in the 2019 waterworks budget. The actual bid came in at $638,000. Can you explain to me very generally where that $62,000 go? Roughly. The difference between what we budgeted and what it came in as a net cost.
So that is the HST that we claim through a rebate ITC with CRA.
So I get that point, sorry. Yes. I'll be more clear. We budgeted $700,000, but
sorry, we budgeted the total bid was, yes, 700 is in the budget, and the cost to the corporation is 638.
So the $62,000 difference, how does that end up in the budget? Where does it go?
That is a surplus to the capital budget. It depends on how this capital project or all capital projects were funded. If it was funded from reserves, as an example, that difference would go back to that reserve. If it was budget through, in this case, the waterworks billings that we collect, it would become part of the surplus at the end of the year for the corporation.
Thank you. So again, I'm asking these as very generic questions, but we'll talk specifically about this. So that's $62,000. When we see the budget this Wednesday, because we've already received that budget at $700,000, we will not see the difference this week when we vote on our budget.
We have already approved the water and wastewater budget in December.
Thank you. Perfect answers. Thank you, and I'm glad it's on camera. Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor? Carried.
Tender 19T08, cleaning, flushing, and CCTV inspection at various city sewers. The action recommended is that this tender be awarded to Veolia ES Canada Industries Services Incorporated from Ottawa at the total bid price of $47,745.44.
Moved by Councillor Sid Gardner, seconded by Councillor Caroline Hébert. Questions? All in favor? Carried.
Tender 19T09, EAB Treasanzin TM injection. Action recommended is the tenders be awarded to Green Lawn Ltd., operating as True Green from Ottawa, at the total bid price of $80,825.51.
Moved by Councillor Claude McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Elaine McDonald. Councillor Glenn Grant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is this an annual cost?
Mr. Boileau.
It is, yes.
So this is a long-term plan, is that
Yes.
correct? Through you, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So would it not be advantageous to try and get a longer term? And perhaps it could be cheaper? Have we checked on multiple years for this, or do we go out annually for a tender for this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would think the only suggestion I can offer is that it's a bit unpredictable what could happen, for example, with this stuff in, say, 2 to 3, 4 years. It could be, for example, that we're not seeing positive effects. In other words, we're on a program of about 10 years with this, and of course, we're talking not only about this, but of tree removals, etc. And the program doesn't necessarily always come out the way you think it's going to come out. So what I'm thinking is that there may be some savings. However, it could be, for example, that in the year 2020 or 21, that we don't feel that it's appropriate for us to spend that much on this program. So there may be some savings in year 2 or year 3. However, our staff would probably make an assessment that we need to change the program a little bit. So while I agree with you that perhaps we might be able to get better pricing in year 2 and 3, we may feel that we don't want to spend that much in year 2 or 3.
I think we've been at this, 5 years or so now?
Yeah, actually, it's another capital project that council will deal with again this week. We have an annual cost of about $300,000 on this program, which was brought down from, I think it was $500,000 in the early years.
Yeah.
So we'll get more information to you this week, but my suggestion is that we probably stay the course unless we can see some, considerable savings in going with a 2 or 3 year program, although it's going to reduce our flexibility in how much we spend in year 2 to 3.
I just think if we have a 5-year experience, it shows that this whatever the tree is in is effective.
Yes.
Then perhaps we could do it. So it's a question about looking at potential savings.
Right. I can make that suggestion to our department. I believe there is probably a little bit of a timing issue here because you do want to award it so that the spring you're getting at this stuff. But so.
Thank you. The other question I have is in financial implications, the corporation is financing this program and will only borrow the required funds. I don't know what that means.
Madam CFO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So this program, like Mr. Boileau said, there's a few pieces to it. It's about $300,000 budget. If this comes in at $72,785, as it's indicated in the report, we'll not borrow $100,000, even though we've budgeted to borrow that. We'd borrow the $72,000 and some, but not ever more.
Okay.
Than
Thank you.
approved.
All good, Councillor Grant? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Tender 19T12, supply of cyber defense hardware and software. The action recommended is that this tender be awarded to Zycom Technologies Incorporated from Kingston at the total bid price of $107,350.
Moved by Councillor Towndale, seconded by Councillor McIntosh. Questions? All in favor? Carried.
Request for proposal 18P22, engineering services for the Brookdale Avenue North Sanitary Sewer Extension from Tollgate Road West to Cornwall Center Road. The action recommended is that this RFP be awarded to EVB Engineering from Cornwall at the total bid price of $891,731.59.
Moved by Councillor Glenn Grant, seconded by Councillor Elaine McDonald. Questions? All in favor? Carried.
Request for quotation 19Q04, migration of IBM Lotus Notes, Domino to Microsoft Exchange Server. The action recommended is that this RFQ be awarded to Point Alliance Incorporated from Toronto at the total bid price of $104,199.28.
Moved by Councillor Elaine McDonald, seconded by Councillor Caroline Hébert. Questions? Councillor Todd Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This just may be a rookie question. $1,000?
Madam CFO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's actually a very good question. Normally, we would not use a request for quotation for that amount of an award. We did go out with a request for proposal, maybe large enough for what they were looking to provide. And so from that, we went out with the same terms of reference with a request for quotation.
Okay. I'm not getting this. So we're asking for a quote from a company, and we're paying them $100,000 to give us a quote?
Oh no.
Okay.
They responded to an official document with terms of reference to get this job done through a quote instead of an RF.
Thank you. That's why it was a rookie question.
It was a very good question. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried.
Our next one is eScribe Meeting Management Software. The action recommended is that council approve the sole source purchase of the meeting management software from eScribe Software Limited for a term of 3 years, with an option to extend for an additional 3-year term.
Moved by Councillor Caroline Hébert, seconded by Councillor Sid Gardner. Any questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Gardner.
Why sole source?
Madam CFO. Question was why sole source?
And maybe the clerk can assist as well. It's a project from the clerk's office. We initially had e-agenda for our meeting management software. That was purchased back in 2005 when there were a few municipalities that were on Lotus Notes. And since then, our ITT department has managed that software. When looking for an alternative for eAgenda, which is on Lotus Notes and we're moving to Outlook, we sourced out eScribe because the city uses eSolutions for its website, and those two products work well together and also work well with Outlook. So when we've done our research on this, we thought that eScribe would be the solution because of the connectivity between the softwares we already have.
Good, thank you.
Any more questions? All in favor? Carried. I would suggest to council that we may want to have some discussions at some point around requests for proposal and quotations and our purchasing policy. I think we're due to have a discussion, rookies and non-rookies. So I'm just putting it out there that we may want to put that on an upcoming agenda. So please think about that. Madam Clerk?
Our next section is new business.
Any new business? Seeing none?
I have none. And we have the passing of the bylaws. That bylaws 2019-016 to 019 inclusive, listed on the agenda, be taken as read and passed.
Moved by Councillor Towndale, seconded by Councillor Hollingsworth. All in favor? Thank you. Reports from standing special committees of council. Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not exactly a report from standing committee, but if you'll permit me, Councillor Grant will permit me here.
No. No. I'll permit you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Towndale.
I'd like to recognize one of our employees in the city of Cornwall, actually, today. Kevin McCarty recently joined our fire department, and this morning he received a commendation from the commander of the Royal Canadian Navy. He's now a former sergeant with the SNG Highlanders, and this sort of commendation is very rare, especially for someone who's in an Army element to get it from a Navy commander, or the Navy commander. But I think he should be recognized as such as receiving this honor this morning. I don't think he liked the recognition publicly, however, I think he deserves it. So I just wanted to point that out, because obviously we should be proud of him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Would he want to come and sign the golden book, or?
Maybe the chief can ask him, but I don't know if he'd want that.
I can ask.
Can you ask? That'd be great. Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Just a brief notes that I wrote down. I was in Toronto for the health unit at an Alpha meeting. There were a lot of things discussed in the enumeration report that we had here, but we also had AMO come in and talk to us about the roles of municipalities with health units. Very interesting. I have a lot of information. Anyone who might be interested in taking a look at it, I've got it.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. On the issue of committees, we're finally going to have a report. It's taken some time because it's quite comprehensive. The CAO has prepared that report. It will be on the agenda for this Monday's meeting. And I would like Council to be prepared to have a good debate. We're going to look at that list of committees, go over the terms of references, talk about mandates, goals, the relationship to council. So come prepared for a discussion. We want to edit the list, but we don't just want to edit. We might want to change exactly how we deal with committees and how committees deal with us. So that's coming up. Okay. Thank you. Any notices of motion?
I have none, Madam Mayor.
Pending business listing.
That council receive the unfinished business listing for February 25th, 2019.
Moved by Councillor Duppel, seconded by Councillor Ibaya. All in favor? Confirming bylaw.
That bylaw 2019-020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the City of Cornwall at its meeting held on Monday, February 25th, having been read, be now taken and passed.
Moved by Councillor Elaine McDonald, seconded by Councillor Todd Bennett. All in favor? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Bennett, Councillor Ibaya. All in favor? Thank you. Be careful out there, please.